if you don't want to pass the neurosis of your personality to your children and their children, if you don't want that to enter your relationships and hurt people, we do shadow work to clear the channel. So if you find yourself feeling jealous, judgmental, or really defensive, more than likely there's a shadow somewhere in there. If your dad got punished for his anger as a child, then he repressed that anger and it came out in sexual feelings and it came out in sadness. Sadness was okay in your dad's family, but not anger. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Rastafari. Blessings and blessings, beautiful souls. My name is Preston Smiles, and I am ridiculously pumped because today's transmission is how to understand shadow work in such a way that you eliminate the self-sabotage, you eliminate the parts of you that don't feel quite alive and aware and online, you eliminate the anxiety that comes from living someone else's life. Oh my God, I am so pumped and deeply excited to be sharing with you in this video. I'm so deep and pumped to be sharing with you this beautiful work that I've been doing for over 20 years. So in this video, we're going to dive into what shadow work is, why it's important, and how to integrate it into your life such that you get to experience levels of freedom and abundance that you didn't even think were possible in this lifetime. Now, trigger warning right out the gate, don't just passively watch this. I want to challenge each and every one of you, whether you're just a passerby and you ended up clicking on this video, or you're somebody who's been in my world, in the Love's Voice Spiritual Millionaire family for a while, to actually take notes, to leave comments below with the things that hit and awaken for you through this process. I am literally tired of just entertaining. I'm about to go so deep into teaching you stuff that has worked for me. Right now, I'm sitting in one of my houses that's on 4 acres. There's 3 houses on this property. I have all the fancy cars. I bought my mom a house. I have my family taken care of. I put myself in a position, not just financially, but like internally, where I feel freer than I ever have been. And so everything I'm about to talk about isn't just theory. Most of the videos you're going to catch from people are them regurgitating theory from Carl Jung and stuff they learned on YouTube, which is not wrong. But what I'm about to talk about and teach you about isn't just that. This is lived experience. All right, so let's start with what is shadow work. Briefly and succinctly, shadow work is us exploring the repressed and unconscious parts of ourselves. The purpose of it is to send light and to heal those areas that have been pushed down, pushed away, ignored, or made wrong or bad because of how we grew up or some type of trauma or shame that we experienced early on. Now, to give you an example of this, there are many people who I work with and have worked with over years who grew up in households where, for example, I had this client, he had this whole aversion to dancing. And as we went further and further into his life, we got to this memory where he was sitting in the living room with his dad and his 2 older brothers. And there was a local ballet that was coming through their town in this specific city that he lived in. And the little boy jumped up and he started dancing like the ballerinas. And his dad looked at him and said, "Stop right now. Only little faggots dance." Well, that client 30 years later had this block around not just dancing, but expression in general. Because in that moment, whether his dad or his brothers understood, that was a moment where that little boy, my client, decided that he would never share those things publicly again. And not only would he not even share them publicly, he was like 7 or 8. He decided, because children are egocentric, that that was wrong and bad. Now, you may say, okay, cool, then just dance. Well, it's not that simple. It's connected to the women he was dating, the relationships that kept failing. Because those women kept saying, there's more to you. I feel like you're holding back. I feel like there's more to you than I can get to. And so fast forward, he finds himself in a workshop with me, in a coaching program with me. in a one-on-one scenario with me where we start to uncover these unconscious parts that he's repressed and pushed down. Now, beautiful thing about this whole story is that man now dances all the time. Not only did he start dancing, he started doing art. He started tapping into his own creativity and reclaiming his power from the shadow that was created in his childhood. Next, we're going to go into why shadow work is important. And before I go into the benefits of going into shadow work and why it's important, I want to go back a little bit and help you understand something that a lot of people don't really fully get until later on. And that's that all of us are social and historical beings. We're social and historical beings, which means we were born into beliefs and interpretations. We were born into family structures, family systems. And inside those systems and those families, there's a lot of shame, trauma, guilt, and passed down generational stuff that we in our little innocent baby consciousness come into. And so if, for instance, your dad got punished for his anger as a child, then he repressed that anger and it came out in sexual feelings and it came out in sadness. Sadness was okay in your dad's family, but not anger. Then your dad and your mom attract each other with these wounds already intact and in place. And if no one comes along and teaches them and supports them in breaking through this, then they pass it to you and your sister or your brother. And now you don't know why you don't have access to your own anger in healthy ways. So I work with a lot of people who have these addictions to shopping and sex and food and porn and things like that. And these are ways in which the animal body is looking for relief because their channel isn't clear. This is all repressed shadow work that's needing to be done so that we can bring those things to the light and start to recognize and bring self-awareness, which is one of the biggest points and the reason why we do shadow work, because you can't intervene in a world you can't see. You can't do jack shit about something if you can't see it and understand it. And so one of the biggest pieces for all of us is to bring awareness. Why do I feel triggered when somebody sings? Why do I feel angry when somebody keeps talking or wastes time? These are all shadows. Why do I feel like I'm going to die if I don't get it right and make it perfect? Shadows. Now, until we can face those shadows, we are a slave to them. But with my clients, and I tell them all the time, that's not who you are, that's who you became. My wife and I have a workshop called the Bridge Experience. And by the way, the website will be below. But in the Bridge Experience, this is some of the most important work we do. We have people face off with their shadows. We purposely put them in high stress situations and then ask them to recognize what their body is doing and then expand into it. This is somatic work mixed with shadow work, mixed with identity work, mixed with the cocktail of stepping into and owning the fullness of the human experience. So why shadow work is important is because of freedom. If you actually want to be free and have the opportunity to heal stuff that wasn't even yours in the first place, if you don't want to pass the neurosis of your personality to your children and their children, if you don't want that to enter your relationships and hurt people, we do shadow work to clear the channel so that there's spaciousness for the truth of our being. It's such beautiful work when you really get what it is. You know, I grew up in a family where my mom was Virgo, she worked at a bank, then she was an accountant, and everything was perfect and right and work ethic and hard work. And then my dad, who took up the role of the screw up, who was flashy and, you know, threw his money away, and he's the guy that's buying everybody dinner and everybody drinks, and he struggled with drug addiction and things of that nature. And so I have these two sides, and the covert contract that I made unconsciously is my dad is bad and wrong, my mom is right and good. And even outside of that, because my mom was really stressed out and my dad was just off doing his thing, and they both got a divorce and then got remarried. The contract I made inside of the drama triangle was that I was going to need to be the hero of the family. I was going to have to save everybody. Okay, well, if I'm the hero, that means that anything that looks like what my dad was doing is bad and wrong. That means I must suppress the things like my animalistic sexual desires to be with women. I'm 14, I'm 13, I'm 12, I'm 17. I want to have sex as a 17-year-old, but there's this part of me that goes, that's what that dude did, and look how he messed our lives up. So I repress so that I could be the hero. But all of this, the whole thing is shadow. It's not the truth of my being. I never did art because my dad was an artist. Shadow. These are all things that we get to move through. You want to be truly free in your life? Number one benefit of why we do shadow work is personal freedom. You want to actually feel alive. You want to heal the wounds and the traumas that occurred in your life. Shadow work. So again, I invite each and every one of you to find a way to work with me if you can and get to the Bridge experience, which is absolutely amazing. It's thebridgemethod.org if you want to work with us. And regardless, I'm just sending you so much love. Let's go to the next thing. Now, the next thing we get to work on is how do we integrate this into our lives now? How do you work on it regardless of whether you can join a workshop like the Bridge experience or join a community like the Spiritual Millionaire Academy, which I highly suggest you do? Well, it's 3 ways. Number 1, start to identify the triggers. So if you find yourself feeling jealous or judgmental or really defensive, more than likely there's a shadow somewhere in there. For example, I had a client whose partner was really good at taking personal time to go celebrate and do cool stuff. And she would get so mad at her husband for taking that time because she had a shadow of the perfectionist and needing to get it right. And in her culture, you work until the bone and you never take time to celebrate. And so all of that was a way that she got to see her triggers and therefore her shadow. Number 2, practicing self-compassion. This is one of the biggest ones because oftentimes when we catch ourselves in things that feel super nasty and not in alignment, we can be really mean to ourselves. And one of the ways that we beat and reconfigure the shadow is to bring and shed light on it, is to love on those shadows, is to be compassionate to the journey that you took and recognize that most of what you think is who you are is not who you are, it's who you became. And you ever had that moment where you're like, that's like my dad. I just sounded exactly like my mom. Or you start to see these patterns playing out, and then you can catch that you used to do that when you were, 7 or 12 or 15. Well, in those moments, you just go, I'm practicing self-compassion. I'm sending love to this part of me that felt so scared that it needed to protect in this way. And you bring love instead of shame. Number 3, and this is a really beautiful one, is you start to journal and ask yourself important questions like, what do I judge in others, right? So even with that one, like really ask yourself, what is it about that judgment? Like even for me, I still had this stuff come up, and there's a particular person in the spiritual community who's a big celebrity who I find myself judging because of the ways in which he operates out loud in the open around his relationship. And I can notice the parts of me that feel like, wow, this guy is so self-entitled and self-involved. Well, that might be true, but the shadow side of that for me is this still recovering people pleaser who doesn't want to come off as self-involved or anything like that. And so you start to journal about these things, and it'll open up a world where you get to shed light on and have self-compassion and all that stuff. Another journal prompt that I think is really important to look at is, where do I feel the most shame? Because shame is often almost always tied to a shadow part of ourselves. So for instance, when I was a kid, I still used to pee in the bed. And instead of saying, hey, I peed in the bed last night, I would feel so much shame and I would hide it. I would hide the blankets, and then I'd wash them when my parents went to work, and I would find a way to keep it away from them because I felt so much shame. Well, as life went on, I started to find myself hiding other things. And all of this was this big light on like, these are the areas I feel shame, therefore these are the areas where I have the biggest shadow. Hear me loud and clear, beautiful souls. If you made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you, and I hope that anything that I said in here has sparked something in you and taught you something and opened up a portal or a channel where you can really feel seen and heard and like begin to do your work. You can do this all by yourself, and I highly suggest that you do it with other people. One of the reasons I experience so much abundance, not just financially, but just like in life in general, is because I'm constantly getting help from other people. So if you want to do this in a community and you can't come to one of my live workshops. I have a community called the Spiritual Millionaire Academy. Just go to PrestonSmiles.com/SMA. It's absolutely amazing and ridiculous, and I highly suggest you find a way to get inside of it. If not, just keep sticking around, leaving comments, loving on each other. This is our family. This is our tribe. We are birds of a feather, and we're flocking together. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being who you are and operating as you are. Blessings and blessings. Ooh, ooh, rah!